This is a special edition of the Jeff Allan Show. Here's Jeff Allan with an exclusive live interview with Prime Minister Stephen Harper on 570 News.
We're very fortunate to have the Prime Minister of Canada with us. Mr. Harper, thank you for being here.
Well, thanks for having me, Jeff. Appreciate it.
Can I get right to it? Most elections are called over, one main issue.
Right.
In this election, there seems to be a lot of reasons, and a lot of people really can't put their hand on it. In your opinion, why are we here? What is this election about? Well,
I think a lot of Canadians are asking why we're having this election. Why are we having our fourth election in 7 years? I asked that question. Canada is coming out of the economic recovery, out of the recession into the recovery, in as strong, if not stronger, a position than virtually any other country on earth. We tabled a budget that was well received by Canadians right across the political spectrum. And then the opposition parties combined to bring us down and force the election anyway. And I think a lot of Canadians are asking why. But I do think whether we should be here or not, and we as Conservatives didn't want to be in this election, I think it's now a very clear choice. I mean, you either, have another minority parliament, which we think is inevitably going to lead to Mr. Ignatieff making some kind of deal with the NDP and Bloc Québécois to run the country, spend more money, raise taxes to pay for it, or we stay on the economic course we're on by putting an end to this minority after minority and electing a strong national conservative majority government. And that's what I think the choice comes down to.
Prime Minister, I need to get something out of the way, and I have to ask you this about this contempt of Parliament thing. Now, many listeners have called me and expressed outrage and anger, and they say that your government has lied to them and withheld information. I mean, how do you respond to them?
It's absolutely on the contrary. This was a pretense. Let's be clear. This so-called contempt, this was not the finding of a court. These were the three parties, the Liberals, the NDP, and the Bloc Québécois, combining to vote a motion through, a motion that had no basis in fact. In terms of the information that requested, we had provided more information than Parliament had ever received before. This was a pretense for an election that people do not want. This election is not about parliamentary motions or games in committees. I think people are fed up with this. It's about the economy of this country, and that's what we have to keep moving forward.
One of the issues on what I'm hearing a lot about, and it's they're not getting misinformation, they're getting different information, and they're concerned about the F-35 jet purchase. Can you tell us why these jets are important to us in Canada, and are the costs related to it accurate?
Well, first of all, let's be clear that we know why our Air Force needs fighter jets. I mean, right now we have fighter jets in Libya as part of an international force, and we know that governments, no matter what their political stripe, will call our men and women in uniform, whether it's the Army, the Navy, or the Air Force, will call upon them to do dangerous work whenever they feel they have to. So we're going to make sure they have the equipment they need. The current fighter jets, the CF-18s, are nearing the end of their life. By the end of this decade, they will be close to 40 years old. The previous government, it was actually the previous Liberal government, began the process of finding a replacement in 1997. We've supported that, and the F-35 will be the replacement. It will start to come. We will start to purchase these in 2016. So first of all, this is 5 years off. I hope nobody really thinks we're having an election over a jet fighter purchase that's 5 years or more away. I mean, if that's the opposition's excuse, that doesn't hold any water. But look, we think we've got a good contract. We're buying these jets at a time when the production costs will be lowest. And by participating in this program from the beginning, we are bringing millions, and we will be bringing literally billions of dollars of work in the Canadian aerospace industry to this country.
Wow. This is Red Friday, and we're very proud to have a Red Friday show here every Friday, and we've done it for years. And
and you wear your yellow ribbon, and it's great work you do.
Well, we support
on
the troops, sir, and the veterans have asked me. They want to know what you're going to do for them in regards of to the Veterans Charter, benefits, education, and pensions. They're concerned, and I know that some things were left on the table when the election was called. What can they look forward to?
Well, most of it did get passed at the last minute. The new Veterans Charter was brought in by the previous government. It was supported by all parties, and we brought in a significant enhancement to that in the last year. In fact, last year we put in $2 billion more money. I think we have now, if you look across the board, I mean, I won't go through all the elements, but I think we probably have the most generous veterans benefits anywhere in the world. And the system has to change because we're shifting, to be frank, from a generation of veterans that much older served, Second World War, Korea. We're now shifting increasingly to a much younger veteran who served in Afghanistan, often dealing with people at pretty serious injuries they're going to have to live with through their lives. So we're prepared. We've been very clear, whether it's the men and women in uniform today or the men and women in uniform in the past, we're going to make whatever investments are necessary to take care of them.
Prime Minister, you unveiled your Here for Canada conservative policy platform today.
Yep.
Could you please describe the key priorities of this plan for our audience? I
Sure.
know there's a lot on there,
Sure.
but if you could,
look, I'll try and resume it in 4 or 5 sentences.
Okay.
And I think we've touched on them. Obviously, the economy, keeping taxes low as a way of ensuring we continue to create jobs and economic growth, making sure we make affordable investments in our communities and in our families. And as you know, once we balance the budget, which is another one of the big priorities I talked about today, we want to make sure we bring additional tax cuts, particularly for families, do things like we announced in the budget, enhance benefits for our vulnerable senior citizens. We're accelerating deficit reduction by 1 year. We want to get that done by 2014. We're moving in the right direction. We want to make investments in our sovereignty. Obviously, I've talked about investments in our military, in our Arctic sovereignty, bringing back the human smuggling legislation that was stopped by the opposition before the Parliament, when the Parliament was brought down. And also, of course, continuing our agenda for safe streets and cracking down on crime. We've had a mandate now for the Canadian public for 2 elections to bring in a lot of criminal justice bills. Most of that stuff has been stalled by the opposition coalition of Mr. Ignatieff, the NDP, and the Bloc Québécois. They fundamentally don't believe that there should be appropriate tough sentences for criminals. So we want to make sure that those measures get passed.
And one of the things I noticed that encouraged a lot of listeners today is the one, you want to work on jobs and job creation. Yeah. Our area has been hit so hard, especially in the manufacturing sector. It's almost a tale of 2 cities in our region now. I'm sure that a lot of people listening would like to know, what are we going to do about those people that are my age, that have lived a half a century and are starting over again? Yeah. What is the government of Canada prepared to do?
Well, let me talk about things that we were doing in the budget. For instance, we brought in manufacturing specifically. A 2-year extension of the accelerated write-off for investments in machinery and equipment in the manufacturing sector. That's what the Canadian Association of Exporters and Manufacturers wanted in the budget, and they supported the budget. For older workers, we have a targeted program specifically for older workers. We extended that program. We have a targeted program on work sharing that close to 300,000 Canadians workers have used. These were things people asked for. We extended those things. These are the things exactly that the budget was focused on, and yet we are having an election anyway. So obviously what we're looking for in this campaign is let's put an end to this nonsense, elect a stable parliament, get back there and pass the things that the business community and the workers of this country wanted to see us do.
Prime Minister, the one thing that came to mind when I was thinking about how you're going to balance the budget is, now these are on projections, and you lay this out ahead of time. Many people complain that your government hasn't worked hard enough in reducing the deficit and doesn't have, this is what I get from the critics, doesn't have the appropriate plan to get us out of deficit and get us into the black. You've come up with a plan today. Yeah. In maybe not too many words, how can we get there, and how are we going to get there?
Well, first of all, let's be clear. Only the Conservative Party even has this on its agenda. And the other parties are proposing vast increases in spending and tax increases that will only slow the economy. So none of the other parties are even focused on this issue at all. We put out a plan in the budget that, all private sector economists have said it's quite credible. The deficit has already fallen by 1/4 last year. It will fall by another 1/4 next year. And if we stay on the track we're on, it will be balanced by 2015. What we're saying in our platform today is we're going to speed that up a year by bringing in some cost efficiencies in the operational expenses of government. This is an area that hasn't been looked at in 15 years. We've been spending the last year looking at this. There's lots of areas where we can trim. We're looking at trimming, frankly, about 2% out of the government expenditure, 5% out of its operating budget. There's room. Everybody knows there's been growth there. There's fat there. Between restraining those expenditures ending the stimulus programs, which we've done, and making sure we have healthy growth, we are going to move inexorably to a balanced budget. And frankly, all the international organizations who've looked at Canada and the other countries say Canada, if it stays on course, going to balance its budget years ahead of other countries. Just
want to ask you one question that came out today, yesterday, that some environmentalists think that we aren't moving quick enough on our reducing in greenhouse gases, and there are doomsayers out there saying that if we don't move yesterday, we're in great trouble. And they're criticizing you and other world leaders for not doing enough. How do you respond to that?
Well, look, nobody has a magic solution to these things. I think what we're doing, what most other countries are doing, is we're making investments in new technology. We're making investments in energy efficiency as well. You know, the opposition asked us to extend the eco-energy home retrofit program in the budget, so we did it. So we're having an election anyway. That was a big thing we were asked to do. But we're also investing in new technologies, working with our partners. We're working with the Obama administration on energy efficiency regulations across North America. We're working internationally in the Copenhagen Accord, and in this country, we're making investments in new technology. I think we're doing as well as anyone, but we have to have a balance. We could solve all our emissions problems tomorrow by shutting our economy down. But that's not what Canadians want us to do. They want us to control our emissions in a way that allows our economy to continue to grow and employ people, and that's what we're focused on.
I have one last question for you. I want to make this easy because this is something we love to talk about on Fridays, and I know when you were last here, you enjoyed a game with our Kitchener Rangers. The simple question. I know you're a hockey fan, and I know you're working on a book about hockey. Yeah. Will the Leafs ever make the playoffs?
Yes.
You think so?
Yes. I'm disappointed they didn't make it this year. I thought they had, really from the end of last season, they had a much better team. And there was a funny team this year. I can't figure it out because they had a lot of the season they played very well. But they had some times where they didn't play so well, and in the end they got squeezed out. But I see the makings of a good team there. They got good goaltending. They got good defense. They got good team play. They maybe need a little bit more scoring punch. But look, I hope is eternal. If I've cheered for Leafs. I grew up in Toronto, and I actually remember the last time they won the Cup. So it's possible.
All right, Prime Minister Harper, thank you so much for your time, and thanks for coming and visiting us. And you're welcome to come by and see us again anytime. Thank you, sir.
Thanks for having me, Jeff.
Thank you.